Apakah mau kita biarkan anak-anak di sana di pantai dan tidak seimbang senjatanya? Apakah kita mau biarkan dunia bersatu menyerang mereka? Siapa Indonesia paling depan untuk menghadap pembantaian di Gaza? Siapa Indonesia menjadi yang terbanyak untuk turun menghadap kezaliman? Indonesia bela Palestina. Palestina merdeka, merdeka, merdeka. Penjajah Israel lawan, lawan, lawan. Biru, hitam, Nabi kaya Aqsa. Biru, hitam, Nabi kaya Aqsa. Biru, hitam, Nabi kaya Aqsa. Biru, hitam, Nabi kaya Aqsa.
جينا نعيدكم بالعيد بنسألكم ليش ما في عنا لا يد ولا ديني يا عالم أرضي محروقة أرضي حرية مسروقة زمان عم تحلم عم تسأل الأيام وين الشمس الحلوة ورفوف الحمام يا عالم أرضي محروقة أرضي حرية مسروقة أرض صغيرة مثل صغيري لتونس.
But I won't show my fears. I keep my head high, deep in my heart. I'll never have any doubt. The Palestine tomorrow will be free. Palestine tomorrow.
Inilah momen ketika seorang penonton bentangkan bendera Palestina di laga MU lawan Copenhagen. Dalam pertandingan MU melawan Copenhagen di Liga Champions tadi malam, ada sebuah momen menyentuh dari seorang penonton. Pertandingan sempat terhenti karena ada seorang penonton masuk ke lapangan sambil membentangkan bendera Palestina. Di bendera Palestina yang dibentangkan sang penonton tersebut terdapat pesan menyentuh, hentikan pembunuhan anak-anak di Gaza, ayo kita bersatu. Isi tulisan di bendera Palestina tersebut, ya memang perang di Israel Palestina saat ini telah merenggut banyak jiwa termasuk anak-anak, sehingga aksi yang dilakukan oleh sang penonton tersebut patut diapresiasi. Bagaimana pendapatmu mengenai hal ini?
educate ourselves, to educate our children, to educate friends and colleagues, and encourage them to come and speak out. And I think it's important that we have so much representation from whether it's Palestinian families or other individuals around here.
Tell you a little story about my grandfather that's probably going to blow your mind a little bit. See, my parents were born in Palestine. There was no Israel prior to 1948. Their parents were born in Palestine, as were their parents, and the generations go back hundreds of years. Palestine was a nation. It was a modern civilization. It had a normal infrastructure. It had airports, it had banks, it had streets and roads and homes and buildings and businesses, and it had a population of Palestinians for hundreds of years. Palestinian Muslims, Christians, and Jews. My grandfather had two business partners. They were farmers. They would sell their produce in the Jerusalem market on weekends, and they were Jewish. That's right. My Palestinian grandfather's two best friends and business partners were Jews. My father grew up with their kids. They all spent weekends together. My grandparents also had Muslim families, friends, Palestinian Muslims that were family friends with them. All of them lived together harmoniously in Palestine. And then the catastrophe happened, and you're not going to believe what happened next. But I want to make this video quick, so I'm going to have you listen to the second part on the next video, part 2. Thanks, and free Palestine, and don't believe the lies.
Well, these protests here in the centre of Sydney today are what these students say they felt they had to come to, despite repeated calls from authorities for them not to ditch school. A few hundred high school students from all across Sydney gathered here outside Town Hall in support of Palestine, students wanting their voices and opinions heard.
As an Arab, I had to do it for my people. I'm not actually missing any lessons, but even if I was, this cause is more important.
My mum wanted me to come here. So many people, too many people are dying.
After around an hour of speeches, these protesters then went mobile as they walked through the city. Police say while this protest was unauthorised, they commended the students for carrying it out peacefully. One man, though, who turned up with an Israeli flag was confronted and then refused police requests for him to move on. He was eventually arrested for breaching the peace. Sydney's Jewish lobby this afternoon have condemned these protests, saying students shouldn't be involved and should be in school. Now what's clear though is that these protests and others like it are set to continue.
I stand here to say that we don't have to be Palestinian to stand with the Palestinian people. Children is unacceptable and a war crime. You do not have to be Palestinian to understand that war crimes are being delivered every single day according to the UN and other humanitarian groups. This is a time for education, because as a previous speaker mentioned, so many people do not understand the context in which this October 7th assault happened. They don't understand the history of the movement of Palestinian people for 75 years.
There is change in track for the R21 service group, 06006.
Have an open mind. If you can get beyond the tribal instincts that have
Israel is a global terrorist. Media outlets are being terrorized, unable to speak. Politicians are unable to speak. University professors fear getting sacked, are unable to speak. Protests are being banned. This is a global terrorist. You are dealing with a global tyrant. We sleep knowing Palestinians have their lights cut off, their communication cut off. If they have a right to defend themselves, why are they so scared for people to speak up and showcase the atrocities that are happening? Because these are atrocities that have been happening for over 70 years. Adel Tamimi stood up to an IDF soldier when she was 11 years old because her brother got taken in, her brother who is 15 years old, because IDF soldiers are scared of Palestinian children. And she stood up to an IDF soldier and got arrested. And now, last night, she got arrested again. Where are the likes of these global heroes, ML Clooney and people we commended and told that they spoke up for what's true? Where are these people who were so vocal before? Where are these institutions that were so vocal? Where are these human rights groups that are so vocal? Where are these women rights groups that are so vocal, that were so vocal? Why is it when it comes to Palestine you're so terrorized you cannot speak? University professors who are scared to lose their jobs, journalists who are scared to lose their jobs for saying the truth, politicians who are scared to say the truth, leaders who are scared to say the truth. How many more innocent civilians have to die before the world wakes up? This is global terror.
The United States government will take finite resources from the American people and fund a brutal bombing campaign that Israel wants to carry out in the Gaza Strip that will just brutalize and murder all sorts of innocent Palestinian civilians. See, for me, seeing what happened to Israeli civilians disgusted me and made me so angry to my core. This war has really shown me that all of the endless, preaching about equality, we need to work toward equality. They're not really about equality. Because as those Palestinian children are being bombed to death, they've got no problem with it. In fact, don't come after me for speaking out against what's happening.
President Biden, not all America's with you on this one. And you need to wake up and understand that. We are literally down watching people commit genocide and killing the vast majority just like this. And we still stand by and say nothing.
As an American, I am so sick and fucking tired of the lies that Western media, Republican and Democrat, that y'all are both putting out lies about what is going on in Gaza. So I went to watch the news last night, and there was a story about an Israeli family. I don't watch the news for information. I watch the news to be like, what are they saying is happening? And the story was telling about a family in Israel that got displaced. They had to relocate to a hotel because of the attacks from the Hamas that killed 50 people in their area. And they were saying how hard it was to be living in a hotel with their entire family fitting in one room. How dare you report on a singular family from Israel that's been displaced when there are over 2 million families in Gaza displaced? The children of Gaza are in the fucking streets, some of them buried under buildings. Fuck you. Fuck you. Genuinely. Do you know how much food is left in Gaza? How's the water in the hotel? How's the food? Because Gaza has almost none left. You guys are fucking disgusting.
The George W. Bush administration condemned the Israeli government for doing an airstrike in Gaza that took out one Hamas militant who killed 14 other civilians. Think about how disgusting and devolved our country has gone, where Joe Biden can't outdo the war criminal George W. Bush, where George W. Bush has more morality than Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. I will not be voting for Joe Biden under any circumstance. I don't care about any other policy that he has championed. I cannot, as an Armenian American, support a president who has greenlit ethnic cleansing and genocide of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. This, for me, is the red line.
The people who really really believe that Israel are killing Hamas only, the only two things I can think of, actually three. You're brainwashed, mentally disabled, or serial killer. You're one of these. Because if you've seen the death toll, if you have just gotten an update on it, it's more than 10,000 people. Half of it, more than half of it, are children, kids, infants, newborn. The other half are women. Women just like me. Do I look like Hamas? Are these kids Hamas? So, no, they're not just killing Hamas. In the West Bank, we all know that there is no Hamas in the West Bank. What about them? What about the killing and the torturing and the kidnapping? What about them? Yeah, Israel is not killing Hamas. They're killing the Palestinians. If you think otherwise, you're either stupid, mentally disabled, or a serial killer. And please don't comment on my video and tell me Israel is killing Hamas. No, they're not.
As I keep researching and learning about what's happening in Palestine right now, I can't stop crying. And I feel helpless, as probably most of you do, but we aren't helpless, especially being a white American citizen. What you can do is you can call into your local government and say that you do not support your tax dollars going to this genocide. If you want to learn more about how the daily life in occupied Palestine is, there's a video on YouTube called Life in Occupied Palestine. It shows how difficult the day-to-day life is there and how disabling it is for someone to be living in an occupied territory, having roadblocks, having their lives be completely derailed. As a human being, I just don't understand how you could not be on the side of the Palestinians when the Israelis are committing the most terrible violations of human rights currently. I cry for my Palestinian brothers and sisters, and I will always support you.
It may seem that Israel is winning because they are unaliving a lot of civilians, but in reality, they are losing. Let me tell you how. Their currency went down by 3%. Their stocks lost 11%, which means $40 billion. Tourism is zero now. Investments are zero. Factories have stopped completely. Schools, offices, and companies are all closed. 240 million are their military losses daily. More than 4,000 soldiers refuse to join the war. 400 pilots refuse to join the war. More than 500,000 Israelis are displaced from their homes. Their people are going against the government and creating protests every day. Tel Aviv became a ghost city. The whole world is knowing the reality, and their propaganda is over. The world is impressed by the Palestinian faith, resulting in some of them converting into Islam because of how impressed they are by the Palestinians and by their resilience. So all of these are wins for the Palestinians.
I don't know who all has seen the moon, but it is something that will play in my head for the rest of my life, asleep and awake. There were a group of people preparing the children that had been martyred, and he was standing with such tenderness. Brushed his beard. It was probably teens between. She loved her papa and he loved her. You just knew it. He held her close to him and he spoke. And then he pulled her back a little bit and he opened her eyes to look at them. Then he kissed them. He and he kissed her, and he rocked her, and he whispered to her, and he smiled, and then he laid his soul and watched it be wrapped in a shroud and in plastic. Her name is Reem, and she is one of over 4,000 children. One of the tens of thousands of Palestinians. I wish I could know all of their names. I will never forget that moment, and I will never forget him.